Bet sizing. It's an art form. It's how you maximize your wins and minimize your losses. Bet big, keep it small, or maybe nothing at all. It can often be the difference between joy and despair. We better get learning.
There's no right or wrong way to play poker. There's not one method that will guarantee success, but there are ways and means for you to maximize your chances of winning. There are good habits and bad habits. There are situations to avoid and situations to seek. And there are those who have the knowledge to exploit them. We're going to teach you how to master the game, from the basics to the advanced.
In our last show, we focused on the purpose of betting, why and when you should bet. And we also looked at the importance of fighting your curiosity and making the folds that save those precious chips. Now you know the reasons for betting. It's time to look further into the subject and find out just how important the size of a bet is.
This show looks at poker played all over the planet, but today we travel to Macau as we assess a hand from the Asia-Pacific Poker Tour and London for action from both the European and the UK and Ireland Poker Tour. There'll be an online masterclass from Daniel Negreanu as he takes us through the key things to consider when making a bet. Then later in the show we drop in on the Bahamas where we hear the thoughts of four well-respected players, Hashem, Pagano, DeMello and Williams, who give us an insight into their use of psychology at the table. Okay, enough build-up. Here's the first of today's tutorials.
The size of the bet is always measured by the size of the pot. A $1 bet can be large in a home game, and a $1,000 bet can be small in a high-stakes game. Today we're going to give you a rough idea of what bet sizing entails. A bet about half the pot is considered small. A bet of 2/3 to 3/4 of the pot is a standard medium-sized bet. Betting anything more is considered a large bet. The size of a bet is almost as important as the decision to bet in the first place. So let's talk about what bets to use and when to use them. A continuation bet, or C-bet, is a bet that's made on the flop by the pre-flop raiser. If you keep your C-bets the same size, whether you have a good hand or a bad one, your opponent will have a tough time deciding if you're bluffing or if you have a real hand. Small bets are also common on dry boards, as it's unlikely that your opponents have draws. This eliminates one of the most important reasons to bet big. You're in the same situation on the river, where you're either ahead or you're not. A small bet is enough to give you the information you need. If your opponent raises, it's likely that they have you beat, and you can fold without losing too many chips. A small bet also works as a value bet, which is a river bet placed with the intention of being called by a worse hand. If the bet's small enough, your opponent might call because they think they are priced in. Now let's look at some online bets to illustrate when to use large bets. Before the flop, bets are much larger than they are later in the hand. It's different because the minimum raise must be at least double the big blind. In this case, the blinds are 100, 200, so the minimum bet would be 400, which is already more than the pot. Usually, a pre-flop bet will be about 2.5 to 3 times the big blind, which is roughly double the pot. A good time to make a big bet is when there are a lot of draws possible on the board. Even more so if you have several opponents and a strong hand. For example, if you have top 2 pair on a board of ace of spades, 10 of clubs, 9 of clubs with 3 opponents, it's a perfect time to bet big. Most of the time, a drawing player will fold here. Other good spots to bet big are when you have a very strong hand or when you're bluffing. Here you have the best hand possible, the 10 to the ace straight. Your opponent has second pair with an ace kicker. With a big bet here, you're signaling that you have a huge hand, or absolutely nothing. Either way, you're putting your opponent to the test by forcing them to make a big decision, and that's good poker. Now you should know when to make small bets or big bets. For all other situations, use medium-sized bets.
So now you know when to bet small, medium or large. Guess you're set. Well, there's one more thing you need to watch out for. You see, a common problem in poker is when people make the wrong size bet by mistake, either pushing the wrong button online or putting the wrong chips in live. Here's an example of how it can get you into big trouble.
In this hand from the first series of the UK and Ireland Poker Tour in London, Gillis Augustus has made a pre-flop raise to 800 with 9-10 suited. Max Silver makes a costly mistake. Holding a meager Jack-8, he intends to make a standard re-raise, but instead he puts the wrong chip in. And re-raises to a huge 4,250. To make matters worse, Femi Fakinley wakes up with pocket aces and re-raises to 10,025. Augustus folds his hand, but Silver is in a terrible spot now. His hand is poor, but he's already committed 4,250 to the pot. We think he should probably write the hand off as a mistake at this point, but with so much already invested, he calls. And now finds himself in a huge pot out of position with only Jack high. The flop brings an 8 which pairs Silver, but frankly, little less than 9-10 queen would have saved Silver's blushes here. McKinley makes a standard continuation bet.
I grabbed the wrong chips when I re-raised.
And now Silver folds, figuring he is way behind. What he should have done then was announce his raise total before the chips went in. Always state your action before acting, people. It could save you a lot of chips and a lot of embarrassment.
If you want to learn more about poker, then go to pokerstars.com.
Following it all so far? Got all the lingo? Well, this might help as we highlight a couple of other specific bets to add to your arsenal. Blocker bet. A blocking bet is a small bet on the river when you're out of position. It's designed to deter your opponent from betting. Let's say there's 1,000 in the pot, and you're holding a marginal hand like top pair with a weak kicker. If you check, your opponent might make a standard bet or even a large bet, and you are facing a tough decision and probably have to fold. If you make a small bet yourself, say 350, your opponent may be wary of you having a good hand and will only call if they have anything. If your opponent has been bluffing, your small blocking bet lets your opponent know you have something. It gives them a problem. If they intend to carry on bluffing, they would now need to bet very big to force you to fold. This will often deter them from attempting it, as they are afraid of being called. They give up the bluff, and you win the hand. They'll only raise if they have a really good hand.
All in.
And you can safely fold. Overbet. An overbet is a bet that is usually larger than the total pot. They are bets used to confuse the opponent. They usually mean one of two things. Either the person that made the bet is super strong, or they have nothing whatsoever. It is quite an advanced play, so be careful before attempting it, as you are obviously going to risk a lot of chips. The overbet is often used when going all in. Sometimes it's just best to shove. Let's suppose the pot is 3,000 and you have 4,000 left. Usually in this situation, you would bet about 1,800 chips. But because your stack is 4,000, it's better to just go all in, even though it makes your bet a bit large. Underbet. An underbet is a bet that is relatively small in relation to the size of the pot. It is usually used to extract value from another person who is perceived to have a relatively weak hand. Blank. A blank is a community card that comes out that appears to be of no use in making any player's hand better.
One thing successful players have in common is a good understanding of when to bet and how much to bet. Here's an expert in the form of Daniel Negreanu to explain how it's done.
We caught up with Daniel in his Vegas pad and fired up a little sit-and-go tournament. Let's get inside the mind of a genius.
I'm definitely committed. Hello, everybody. We are at my house. This time I'm playing in a $5 sit-and-go, 9-handed. I want to try to get a feel for who knows what they're doing and who does not. Okay, generally in a 9-handed sit-and-go, you really want to play pretty tight early. I've got a pair of jacks, so obviously going to raise with this. We've got a limper, AA74. We know what limping means. It's usually a weak player, so I'm going to actually kick it up to 80, which is 4 times the limp. A pair of jacks usually plays better heads up than it does 3 or 4 handed, so I don't want to limp in. I definitely want to put some pressure on the limper. That's not the greatest flop in the world, but the fact that he limped in leads me to believe he probably doesn't have an ace. I'm going to protect these jacks anyway. There's 190 in the pot. I'm going to bet 100, figuring he's going to fold most of his hands here anyway. Okay, and he does throw it away. So not a great flop for the jacks, but as I mentioned, because he limped in, you know, there's a lot less to worry about. Let's do it, buddy. Come on. Tick tock, tick tock. He's all in. Okay, perfect. I really want to get a call here. Notice I made it 120. I would have normally made it 60 or maybe 90, but with this player, he's pretty loose, and I think he's going to call. So now we flopped an ace. I'm going to go ahead and bet 210. I'm hoping to get it all in, figuring that I can bet like 380 or so on the turn and then the rest on the river. He's called. Okay, that's good news. I'm going to bet 420, which leaves me about 660 to bet on the river, which seems like a good bet size. So hoping now he goes all in or calls me. I think if he has an ace, he's going to. And he does just call, which is very strange. You'd think that, you know, a more advanced player in that spot is never going to just call. They're going to go all in. So, oh, he just moved all in. All right, 654. Huh. But I don't see how we can fold ace-king in this spot. So we're going to have to call. He's got king-queen. Okay, so amateur player made an amateur play. He was drawing almost dead. He had 2 outs, and now we are the chip leader. That's my killer dog, Mushu. Ow. He's got a good hold on that finger. Yep, that's my friendly little chihuahua.
Leave the dog alone, Daniel, and get back to work.
All right, I've got ace-jack on the button. I don't love this hand, but we've got a lot of chips, and we're playing against amateur players in position. I could re-raise here, but if I do, I'm going to have to play for his whole stack. So instead, I'm just going to call with the hand, take a flop in position. Okay, the flop's 4-4-3, no help for us, but we still could have the best hand with ace-jack. He's checked, okay. Well, I'm going to take my chance here. He might be trapping me, but I'm going to find out for 200. There's 375 in the pot, so I'm betting right around 50% of the pot. I think if he check raises here, he's going to have a pretty good sized pair. But if he has ace high, he might actually fold it. Certainly a hand like king queen, I think he'd fold. And he folded. Okay, so well played.
Well, Daniel seems to have that under control. We'll be back for more from the Bet Sizing Masterclass in Part 2.
Time for a break now, but here's a quick question about bet sizing. The blinds are 500 and 1,000, and you have a stack of 8,000 chips. You've been dealt 10-10, and all players fold to you in middle position. Should you A, call 1,000, B, raise to 3,000, C, move all in, or D, fold? We'll give you the answer after the break. Before the break, we asked you this question. If you had 8,000 chips and were dealt a pair of 10s, and all the players had folded to you in middle position, would you A, call 1,000, B, raise to 3,000, C, move all in, or D, fold? Well, the answer is C, move all in. And here's why. If you decide just to call, you'll allow other hands to see a flop, and your pair is vulnerable to overcards. If you decide to make a standard raise to 3,000, the problem's the same. You may tempt in hands such as King Jack, who could easily make a higher pair than you on the flop. If you move all in, you can often just win the blinds, but this adds a much-needed 3,000 to your stack. You could also be called, but stand a good chance of doubling up, as a pair of 10s is a strong hand. Unless you happen to see your opponent holding a pair of aces somehow, folding should not be considered. With only 8 big blinds in your stack, a pair of 10s is far too strong to fold. Take your chances and get your chips in the middle. Back over to Vegas now for part 2 of Daniel Negreanu's online masterclass as we focus on bet sizing.
When we left Daniel, he was chip leader with 8 players remaining in a $5. Careful, Daniel. Sit and go. As we rejoin him, he's still chip leader and there's 1 player less.
Pair of queens. Ideally, I'm going to get it all in against one of these short guys. It's been raised here by I bet you win. He's only got 1,200 total, and he's made it 2. So I'm going to just make it 400, which should commit him. Made it 400, fully expecting I bet you win to move all in. He's called. Okay, that's strange. You would think that he's going to raise there. Now there's 950 in the pot, but most importantly, his stack size is only 812. So I don't want to bet more than half his stack because that should, send a message that he's committed. So I'm going to try to get him to call or play by betting 300. He's all in. Okay, perfect. So he's got ace-10 offsuit. So it worked perfectly. I think if I would have went all in on the flop, he may have folded the ace-10, but he's just caught the ace. Just before I said it worked perfectly, you got to focus on not the result, but on the way you played the hand. In this position on the button, he's supposed to raise a lot of hands, so we're going to take our chances again and make it 500. This is why I like my bet size. Instead of re-raising to 700 or 600, make it 500. That way, if Denver Doll goes all in, I can get away from this and I can fold the ace-10. This is a raise made based on position. You'd expect the button to raise over half the time. And he's all in. Okay, well, we've already got 500 in the pot. Okay, it's costing us 1,374 to call. So even if he has a pair of jacks or a pair of queens, we're still getting pretty close to the right price. And he has ace-8, as mentioned. So we're in great, and he flopped an 8. So sick. This guy's name is I Bet You Win, but I bet you he doesn't win very often.
Well, Daniel got the last laugh. I Bet You Win bubbled, finishing 4th and 1 place off the money when he failed to hit his straight or the flush draw. As we rejoin it, Daniel has got plenty of work to do. He's the short stack of 3, and yes, the overbet all-in is a viable option.
Denver Doll raised on the button, 600. I just can't really fold an ace, so I'm gonna have to just hope that he doesn't have a big hand. He called. He got ace-9. Ugh, we're in trouble. We need a deuce or a 3. Nope, that's not gonna do it. Decent result, we made the money, and don't forget, that guy I Bet You Win, he was so lucky against us. Remember that, right? Ugh, dirty.
Unlucky not to win that one, but let's have a look at a live example where Daniel uses his knowledge of bet sizing to outplay his opponent.
Bet sizing is a language spoken between poker players. The best players speak it fluently. In this hand from EPT London, Angel Shlomi has raised to 475 before the flop, almost 5 times the big blind with a pair of kings. Fazza Banyati calls in middle position with a pair of 6s. Action is folded around to Daniel Negreanu on the button, who decides to call with 9-10 of diamonds. The size of Shlomi's bet indicates that he has a strong hand, and if Negreanu connects well with the flop, he feels he could win a lot of chips. The flop gives Daniel top pair, but Shlomi still holds an overpair to the board and makes a very big continuation bet of 1,525, the size of the pot. Banyati reads Shlomi's bet as strength and wisely decides to fold his pair of 6s. Negreanu chooses to call with top pair, aware that he may be behind in the hand at this point. The turn card is the Queen of Hearts, which means Shlomi still has an overpair to the board. Now he bets 2,125, less than half the size of the pot, a lot smaller this time. Here is where Daniel begins to see a way of winning this pot. Shlomi's bet represents a big pair, which is becoming increasingly afraid of the board. Negreanu calls in this knowledge. The river card is the 8 of clubs, and Shlomi makes a very small, timid bet of 3,000, which confirms Daniel's suspicions. He is now sure that Shlomi has one of 2 hands, aces or kings, and reads the 3,000 bet as a sign of weakness. Because of this, he feels a big bluff will force a fold from Shlomi, as one pair could now easily be beaten. He bets 12,800, representing a lot of strength.
I'm thinking aces or kings.
After Daniel tells his opponent exactly what cards he has, Shlomi folds. Nice move. Don't try this one at home. Well, not too often anyway.
If you want to watch the show again, recap previous episodes, or join the series at a more advanced level, then go to everythingpoker.com.
Everything you wanted to know about poker is divided into 2 levels. Back in level 1, the novice level, we dedicated the shows towards helping you pick up the basics. We learned the power of position and the value of starting hands. Now that we have completed the level, you should be a competent player. In level 2, the experience level, We are yet to cover getting information from your opponents, playing styles, and the nuances of playing hands dependent on their strength and potential. By the end of level 2, you should be ready to dominate those tables.
Time for the relaxing part of the show now, where we move away from the table and get a unique insight into the way the pros think. It's the powwow.
Poker is a game of psychological warfare. The table is the battleground and the chips are the weaponry. The players sit still for hours, but the minds race as each tries to outwit the next. In a Bahamas beach hut, a stone's throw away from the tournament floor, 4 pros discuss their opinion on the psychology of this great game. WPT title holder and 2-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner David Williams. The Dutch Olympic gold medal winner and promising newcomer to the game, Fatima de Mello. The Italian with more cashes on the EPT than any other player, Luca Pagano. And the 2005 World Series of Poker champion, Joe Hashem.
Poker's a pretty interesting game, right? But regardless what happens, psychology of the game is still paramount. You guys agree with that?
It's very important to understand what your opponent can understand.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
otherwise, probably you are.
You outthink yourself.
Exactly.
We've all done that.
Correct. Exactly. And that's the point where you start doing mistakes.
I kind of just look at my opponent's body language and how comfortable they look. If they look comfortable or uncomfortable, if they're experienced or not, then figure out what I think that means. But if you're able to see that, because by watching the player earlier, you can decide, okay, this is a guy who would be comfortable when he's bluffing or he would be comfortable with the nuts. I mean, you have to make that decision. And
If you had one question that you would ask and he has to answer, what would be the question?
do you want me to call? You know, that's a question you see a lot of people ask.
Yeah.
And it's funny how often people give the true answer.
It's so true, isn't it?
Thinking, trying to, like, you know, this level, like maybe he's not telling the truth, but most of the time people give you the true answer.
Okay, here's a question for you all.
I don't.
Best way to get someone on tilt?
Depending on the player, usually showing a bluff in
Yeah.
a big spot. I mean, it's hard. Some players,
For sure.
some
Showing a
players,
bluff, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Does that tilt you?
Yeah.
If someone shows you a bluff?
It does.
I'll remember that.
Yeah, obviously. But but then I just get up and I know that it gets me on tilt, so I just take a little break.
Personally, I don't feel very comfortable on trying to put an opponent on tilt. I rather prefer to beat him with the cards. I mean, you know what I mean. I just don't feel very comfortable in pushing around people.
So you try and tell us you're a nice guy.
Kind of.
I mean, have you guys noticed too that there's been a decline in number of earphones at the table? People now are going back to, I want to sit here and actually listen. I want to watch. I want to pay attention and not lose myself in my music, which goes back to what we're talking about, into getting into people's heads.
I actually like to speak with the people at the table, but I also know that I'm going to lose the focus on the game, and I also know that I can give away information.
you notice there's the type of people that if you become friendly with them, they actually take it easy on you. They can't help it, and they feel like, well, we made this bond now, I can't bluff this guy. And sometimes you'll see, you know, there might be a guy, you know, on my left or on my right who just seems like that nice guy, and they have me covered, and I start chatting them up, and then they get very friendly with you, and it's kind of a spot where they feel obligated to always have a hand when they play with you, and you can tell. And I found that that's a good tactic I use a lot. And
I'm always suspicious of people where I have position on. If they start talking nicely to me, I'm like, yeah, right. Just because I have position on
yeah,
you.
they're chatting you up, and the next thing you know, in a hand, they're like raised, and like, so how you know, you just forget, you're like, oh, and they don't want to, you know, you don't want to raise that guy because they're your buddies. So
You know how sometimes there's someone at the table that's got your number and it starts messing with your head, like he's picking on me. I like to think that sometimes I'm strong enough, sometimes I'm not. That I know you've got my number today. You know what? Good luck to you. I'll just stay out of your way.
Yeah, I
I'll
just
find
feel
someone
like a
else
dog.
to pick on.
I feel like a dog
Yeah.
that has to roll over and just, okay,
Yeah,
it's
good-
fine,
yeah.
it's fine. I'll give up my big blind.
Yeah,
Okay.
just take, because you
yeah,
know,
that's the best course of action is stay out of hand with them, and they can't pick on you, and
Yeah.
you know, the table will break or the day
instead
will
of getting
end.
stubborn and saying, no, I'm going to show you this hand. I know you've got nothing. I want to re-raise you, and they wake up with aces and you're walking out the door.
So that's not everything you wanted to know about poker, but we're making good progress. Let's review what we've learnt today. We looked at bet sizing and exactly what determines the size of the bet you should make. We covered the various different types of bet and their purposes. We also saw how the bets that your opponents make give you a good insight into the cards they may be holding.
I'm thinking aces or kings.
To experiment with all you have learned in the show today, go to PokerStars.com and follow the simple instructions for downloading the free software. Once on the site, sit down at a table, and this week's task is to play according to our bet sizing guide. If the chance arises, test your ability to execute some of the more advanced types of bet we covered in the show today. If you follow our guidelines, it will help you to maximize your winning hands and minimize your losing hands.
Coming up on the show next time, we take our first look at playing styles and travel to San Remo, Italy, where we examine the game of one of the most highly regarded players of recent years, Jason Mercier. We get analysis from the one and only Daniel Negreanu, who explains the problems of playing too passively. Plus, we get more advice from the pros as they explain how to find the playing style suited to you. This is the greatest game on earth, ladies and gents. Let's master it together.